Hello, and how are you? Welcome to another series on gender-based violence. My name is Winnie Berawa. If you're new here, this channel focuses on classes, lessons, and expert interviews relating to healthcare and any related content on it. So don't leave if you've not subscribed yet and keep with me all the way to the end. So in this session, we are going to introduce gender-based violence, define what it means, and look at the global statistics that reflect about gender-based violence. And before I begin, I would like to just break up some myth about gender-based violence that unfortunately majority of us thinks gender-based violence is about women, but that's not true. Gender-based violence can affect either men or women. So let's define the first terminology of violence. Violence originates from a state of power and control, and this state of power and control is where the perpetrator uses their position of authority to oppress the vulnerable victim. Although nowadays we talk about vulnerable survivor. So definition of gender-based violence is whereby we use it as an umbrella term for any harm that is perpetrated against a person's will, and this is based on socially ascribed gender differences between men and women or males and female. So it has a negative impact on both physical, psychological, also health, development, or identity of the person. So it's not a positive thing to generally practice gender-based violence on other people based on its effects. So gender-based violence can happen either in public, it can also happen in private. So it is our responsibility to all that we fight and stop gender-based violence, either you are a man or a woman, or you are of a different identity. So gender-based violence simply means an umbrella term that is used to refer to any harm that is being perpetrated against an individual's or a person's will. Meaning in this state, there's no consent, there's no right that has been given to the perpetrator to inflict such type of harm in their body, in their minds, or in their spiritual well-being. And this is basically talking about this harm coming in due to the ascriptions of being gender differences like being female, being male, or being of different identity. So it has a negative impact on both physical, psychological, health, development, and any other effects that comes from it. So GBV is a very serious issue, and don't assume it can be in public, and unfortunately more so it happens a lot in private. So when it comes to the United Nations, we talk about the United Nations Declaration on Elimination of Violence Against Women, Article 1, which defines more on the gender-based violence, although it focuses on the women, and it defines as follows. Gender-based violence is an act, or basically we say any act that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological harm or suffering to the women, including the threats of violence, coercion, arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether happening in public or happening in private life. So UN declaration basically emphasizes on the aspect of gender-based violence, the effects and how it can happen in women. So it defines it as any form of violence that can result in physical, sexual, psychological harm or suffering in the women, including any form of threats of violence, coercion, or depression of their liberty. This now talks about rights, their freedom, which can happen either in public or in private. So this is the definition that is based on the UN Declaration for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. However, when you're defining gender-based violence, we advise you that you encompass all genders without discrimination to just talk about women only, because others mostly ask if you're defining it um, leaning more in the women, does it mean now gender-based violence is about women? No. Gender-based violence is about both men and women or any other identity that a person chooses to. So the prevalence and global statistics as it stands reports that women and girls are the most at risk and most affected by gender-based violence in the current statistics, where it says that boys, men, and sexual and other gender minorities also experience gender-based violence, and the men prevalence stands at 3%. And the other bit is 1 in every 3 women have experienced physical and sexual violence by their partners. These are statistics originating from the WHO. So as you see, if you're not seeing the references, just know the references are generated from the WHO sources. So the women and girls are the most exposed to these risks of gender-based violence, while men and boys also experience this, but they form about 3%. While for the women, the prevalence stands at 35%. 38% of murders of women are committed by intimate partners, while for adolescent girls, we have around 45% globally reporting sexual experiences or sexual intimate violences. There's an emerging trend that is currently coming up, and that is the aspect of e-violence, which refers to the internet and social media types of violence. And this violence can happen in any platform of social media, including Facebook, X, what we formerly called Twitter, and it can also be through our emails. So we don't just confine violence to just happen purely via the physical realms where you can see each other or communicate to each other, but it can also happen on the internet. It can also happen via the communication channels on the internet, and this is not limited to Facebook or X. It can also be on the platforms of Instagram. It can be in other platforms like YouTube due to slandering comments, insulting comments, or degrading comments that can affect a person either psychologically or it can harm them even physically for those who come physically to harm these people. So the statistics are widespread, and this is a reflection of the global statistics with data from the WHO websites. So when it comes to perpetrators, we are told that the research shows more men, are more likely to perpetrate violence if they have history on the following. More men seem to grow up as perpetrators when there is risk of low education, risk of history of being child maltreatment, exposure to domestic violence, harmful use of alcohol and drug abuse, unequal gender norms, including attitude of accepting violence as a sense of entitlement for women or over women. However, we need to know that a lot of perpetrators of gender-based violence, majority of it is culture originated, where the culture that someone grows up in or the society that someone grows up in has tolerated the nature of overbearing women or accepting violence in state that they make it look normal. And so for perpetrators where there's risk of low economic sources, low education status, harmful use of substances, tends to really um, castigate or tends to really promote the bad habit of looking at gender-based violence as a normal occurrence. And so people grow up to think these are normal activities that can happen in their home states. However, there is no excuse that allows one to practice gender-based violence on any other person, be it a man or be it a woman. So yes, the statistic shows that men are the most likely to be perpetrators, but don't forget that women can also be perpetrators of gender-based violence, regardless of the risks and exposures that they have been into. So highlighting here are the different types of gender-based violence that this series is going to focus more on, and we will discuss on sexual violence, physical violence, emotional violence, harmful traditional practices, which are also part of gender-based violence types, and socioeconomic violence. So this will be our focus as we go through this series on gender-based violence. So be with me and let's study all the way to the end. And don't forget to subscribe if you've not done that yet. Like, comment, and share in your communities. Thank you so much and see you in our next lesson.